Hey, are they gonna? I mean, I saw somebody today or yesterday say like, since you guys are doing online classes, I mean, do you still teach?
Yeah, I'm still an English teacher. Yeah,
So, and where are you still at the University of Santiago
of Chile,
of
University of
Chile?
Chile. Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a bit because I want to find out about you. I mean, I was writing for Prensa Irrevente. Irrevente.
Irreverente.
That's how
Yeah.
atrocious my Spanish is. And you would always make me write in Spanish. I mean, I appreciate that. At the time, it was a pain in the ass, right? At the
Yeah.
time, it was a pain in the ass. But I mean, not looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, I'm glad he made me do that.
No, yeah, it makes you learn and you get the habit of using, practice makes perfect. So
And people always avoid the things that they're bad at, but then they never get good at it.
exactly,
Yeah.
you have to polish it.
So yeah, you're doing online classes, and somebody on my social media was like, okay, I'm a teacher and I'm doing online classes, so am I going to get my internet paid for? Am I going to get some of my electricity bill paid for? Because I'm online all day talking to
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah, we had that. So in the English department at the university, they they screwed up on it completely. But they gave us like just for 1 month they paid for our internet. Um, but the bonus they like screwed up because we have a new administration, so then they screwed up giving the bonus, and then like the new administrators they both like had to like give us like from like their personal like bank account like the money. And so like now like that like they're gonna give us the official bonus like next semester. No, total disaster. Total
Wow.
disaster.
Yeah.
But now we're in between semesters mostly. It's
Oh yeah,
very
because you guys are in the
chaotic.
southern hemisphere, right? So it's summer
Right.
down there or it's
No,
winter
no,
down
we're,
there.
we're winter, yeah.
Yeah. So how does the semesters work down there? I mean, where are you guys at right now?
So normally,
Yeah.
first semester, the year starts in March. First semester is March, April, May, June, and then we end in July, mid-July, beginning of July, and then 2 weeks of winter vacation, and then August, beginning mid-August, second semester starts and then ends mid-December. But we haven't had like a semester like that since like 2018,
Because
like
of the
the first
protests and
half,
everything, right?
because of the protests and then because of the pandemic.
Well, explain. I mean, I know about Chile, right? I know it's you can't even if you're in Chile, you can't know everything about Chile, right? Because there's so
Right.
much going on. But so tell the audience, about the protest. What's been going on since 2018?
So right now the protests have kind of like uh what's the word? Unsuccessful, like they stopped, but like
Same here,
they
yeah.
because obviously the pandemic, like, because like we always say like we fight for life, like so like we're not gonna like expose anyone and all that. But
Right,
like right now there's protests because of the Mapuche, like in the southern part of Chile. I
right.
guess for people
Very
here.
independent, right? They've always since colonialism, they've kept out the white power, right? The white conquerors.
Exactly. They're actually the only people of the Americas that weren't conquered by the Spanish. The Spanish actually had to sit down and like negotiate with them
Wow.
because Chile were a string bean country. So like the southern part was like reserved for what the Mapuche called One Mapu, which like was land for them. And then
Right.
when the Chilean state was created in 1810, and then a couple years later, like a couple of decades, like 1840s, 1860s, more or less, it was like they called the pacification of the Araucanía. The Araucanía region was where the Mapuche were
Southern
forced to
Chile, right?
stay, southern Chile, and then it was a massacre, it was militarization, and they took away the land. And then during Allende, the Unidad Popular, like the Popular Unity government, a lot of that land was returned back to the Mapuche, and also many Mapuche groups like did land seizures. But then when Pinochet came and did the coup and started dictatorship, he did the massacres, and he took the land back and then sold it very cheaply to Canadian and U.S. Foresting companies. And these forests, and so there's still this huge land dispute, from over 500 years basically. And Mapuche fight for land, especially because in many cases they have deeds to these lands, and they fight, landowners, because there's also like a process of like colonization during the Chilean state, because they invited like German settlers like during the 1800s to come like mejorar la raza, better the race,
That's
and
crazy that they've done that in a lot of Latin American countries, right? Where they
exactly.
did it in Puerto Rico, right? What was it called? The something de la gracia, which is basically to bring white Europeans in so that Tainos and black people wouldn't have any land. It's like the people who already live there don't have rights to the land, but we'll invite white people from Europe to come and
Yeah,
hey, here's free land.
exactly. Exactly. And then they accused, like communists of wanting everything for free, but then he gave like these people, they got all the things for free. And so right now we have, it's about 20 something Mapuche leaders that are in hunger strike. They've been today it's about 102 days on hunger strike. One of the biggest cases is in Mapudungun, which is the language of Mapuche, is a man who's a machi, is like a medicine man, I guess. Celestino, that he was accused of arson that ended up resulted in like in the Luxembourg. They're like a famous German, very wealthy German landowning family that two of their members were killed in this fire. There weren't any concrete evidence against him, and so what he's been asking for years really is to be put in its called a rewe, which is like his community area, because it's some convention of the United Nations that indigenous people, when they are accused of crimes, that they have a treatment that is different from non-indigenous people. Indigenous people, which basically means that they could complete their fill their penas, like their
whatever their penalty.
Yeah, they're like sentences, I guess, like in their community, like house arrest, basically.
Right.
And so this hasn't been happening, and the government, hasn't responded. And today in the court, they rejected his, we call it recurso de amparo, which is, I don't know the English, an appealment, I guess, for the machi to be put. So, now people are scared that, he may actually die because he's going to start like the full hunger strike. Before it's just not like
they drink like a little bit of water, right? A little bit of bread.
A little bit of water, but now it's like not just nothing, no, not taking anything in,
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading about Gandhi, and that was his whole. I mean, that's where people get it from, right? The hunger strike. He really made hunger striking a thing, Gandhi, like in the 30s and 40s, So I mean, who's president down there? Is it Piñera?
Piñera. Yeah, Piñera.
Again, man. Yeah. Like, didn't you guys kick him out? You guys were all pissed, and then you're like, let's bring him back.
I mean, the thing is, you look at the voting, like in the elections were 2016.
How does it work? Do you guys have multiple parties? I mean,
so we have like basically right now we have like three main political forces. We have the one that's
lucky. We only have two in America.
But this is very recent. So the first coalition is I forget the name. Oh, it's Chile Vamos now. So it's made up of the UDI, which is the Unión Demócrata Independiente, which is a party that was made by a man named Jaime Guzman, who was like the civil right-hand man of Augusto Pinochet. Jaime Guzman actually was the one who wrote our current constitution that was created
during Pinochet constitution. You guys are trying to change that, right? Because since the 80s?
Since the 80s, and has not been changed.
Yeah.
And then along with the Renovación Nacional, which used to be the National Party, which was the ones who instigated did all the protests and the destabilization against Allende's government, the Unidad Popular. And this is Piñera's party. There's another smaller party. It's more like the right wing, young right wing people, is Evopoli, which is like kind of like the liberal right, I guess. It's similar to I can't think of a equivalent in the States, but and then
kind of like libertarian, kind of like more about
not libertarian because they're more like, I don't know, they're like the own thing. And then we have the I don't even know what the name is called anymore because it's always changed. First is Concertación, which is basically the ones who organized the plebiscite against Pinochet in 1888. They were the opposition,
right? Bachelet's party.
With Bachelet. So this is made up of the Socialist Party, the Christian Democrats, but very interesting. Not interesting, but pretty horrible is that Christian Democrats actually were the ones who fought against the Socialist Party during Allende. And then after, because they actually thought they were going to get into power after Pinochet did the coup. Then they realized that he wasn't, and then they realized that also murdering people and torturing people. Like, okay, maybe we should join the opposition against Pinochet. So then another party is called Partido de la Democracia, like Party for Democracy, which is made by a man Ricardo Lagos, who also has been our president. He was president in 2004. El Partido Radical, which is like the Social Democrat Party, and then the Communist Party that used to join them and then so the concertación stopped existing 2014, became nueva mayoría, like the new majority.
Whoa, what a fucking dystopian name for a party, man.
Yeah,
the new majority. Jesus.
Yeah, and we always say, like, you know, que nueva mayoría si gobiernan para la misma minoría.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, like, so they, and then we have this new group that's like a lot of people came from like the student movement in 2011, which is called Frente Amplio, and it's made up of new parties that most of them came out from the universities, like Convergencia Social, what else? Convergencia Social, because there used to be other smaller parties and they all joined together. Convergencia Social, Revolución Democrática, or George Jackson he's one of the famous student leaders. And I think
so. How do the parties govern? Right? Is it parliamentary? Like so.
So we have Congress, like we have the Senate and the Cámara de Diputados, like the Congress,
right?
And then we have the president. And there's no vice president. Is the Minister of Interior.
Oh, interesting.
Interior Minister, I don't know.
Which is like what? He's like in America, I think that it's the Attorney General, right? He's like the top law enforcement person.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess I never thought about that. Yeah, I guess so.
Whenever I'm reading about Latin America, you read about the Interior Minister. He's a very powerful person in Mexico, a very powerful person in Chile, and it sounds like to us in America what we call Attorney General, the top cop. You know.
Yeah, I guess so. It was like the Attorney General, like sees like all the because they're in charge of like intelligence and like the police,
security,
and political responsibility for like actions of the police and army. Yeah, you're right. I guess that's the best one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great to talk to you about Chile because like we're having a rough time in America. Like I don't know if you are paying attention. I mean, I don't know why you would, but
in the States,
yeah, we just nominated. I mean, we have Joe Biden, who's senile. He's senile. Ya está viejo. Ya está muriendo, right? And they keep him out of the cameras because he can't speak, right? I feel bad for him, but like I'm mad at the party. Like, why are you putting this man up there, right? And then he just nominated a vice president, Harris, who was the top cop in San Francisco. She locked up over 1,900 people for marijuana. She didn't. Her office found over 1,000 instances of illegality in Steve Mnuchin's bank, One West, when he was in San Francisco. Steve Mnuchin's now our Secretary of the Treasury, and she did not prosecute him. She wanted to lock up parents whose kids didn't go to school. So she's just bad, right? She's she's a law and order. There's a lot of that in Latin America, right? Law and order. That means mano dura, right? That means mano dura.
Exactly, mano dura, yeah.
And so, like, it's great that you're on here because, being an American, because I am, right? I can't help it. But I read a lot about Latin America, right? And so if you don't know about Latin America as an American, I'm talking to my fellow American citizens. If you don't know about Latin America, then everything that's happening in American politics seems weird. But if you know Latin American politics, it happens all the time. It happens all the time, right? Like in Christian democracy is very popular in Latin America, right? There's a lot of Christian Democrat parties, but they're not Christian and they're not democratic, right?
No. It's something. For example, look at the Christian Democrat parties in Venezuela, and here in Chile, like.
But that's what I'm saying. Like in America, a person who doesn't know, they say, "Oh, the Christian Democratic Party. Oh, they must be great. Why is the government against them? Why are the people against the Christian Democrats? Because they're not Christian and they're not Democrat.
Yeah.
It's sad. The other thing I wanted to talk. I mean, let's get into before we get into the Latinx thing that I really want to ask you about as a Latin American, like how you see it as. Tell me about your background, man. Like, first of all, how do you pronounce your first name? I've been calling you Benji, but I don't know if that's right.
Benji, and Benjamín is...
Benjamín? My dog's name is Benny. Se llama Benny. And I say, Benjamín. I just, all the time,
Benjamín, exactly.
Especially when he's in trouble. I'm like, Benjamín,
Benjamín, yeah.
But, so yeah, I mean, what's your background? I mean, Benji's not. I mean, what kind of? I was gonna say, what kind of name is Benji? You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, like
un apodo.
What is it?
A nickname, un apodo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now my name is Benjamín, like legally. Yeah.
It's interesting that South American culture, Latin America is one culture, right? But South American culture is very different from Central American culture. Very different from.
Yeah.
So
very different.
like I dated a Argentinian girl, and the people there. If your name is Patty, right, Patricia, Pato's a common nickname, but you only hear that in South America. You only hear that in South America. But anyways, tell me about your background. I mean, how do you? I bring people on the show because especially if I've worked with them, but I don't really know. You and I don't get to talk, right? Not deep,
Not
we just comment on each other's. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, how do you become an English professor at the University of Chile? I mean, start with the beginning.
Beginning.
Where were you born?
So I was born here in Santiago, Chile, son of a American mother and a Chilean father.
Wow.
Both of them were part of a group called MIR, was the Movimiento Izquierda Revolucionaria. It was like a guerrilla group in Chile during the 60s until the 80s. And my mom was what we call like an internationalist, like internacionalista.
I'm the same way, yeah.
Chile, when the operations they call it the return operation, Operación Retorno.
Where was she from in the United States?
From New York originally.
Oh, wow.
And
she went there she went to Chile in when?
1979. And 1979 was 6 years into the Pinochet.
I was going to say that's the wrong time for an American from New York to go to Chile, right?
And this was the return operation because the MIR, their policy at first was the MIR like no se asila, does not ask for asylum, fights to the death, and that happened to many people. But certain people they sent outside of Chile to kind of get like international solidarity. And so 1979 was the return operation where these Miristas came back with maybe some people they had recruited in the exterior, like outside of Chile, to create a guerrilla group to fight against.
So she got recruited in New York.
Actually, she got recruited in California because my mom studied in Berkeley. So she was only 22 years old. She barely spoke Spanish.
Wow, your mom sounds like an interesting woman, man.
Yeah,
she was at Berkeley in the 70s. I can't imagine the kind of fucking. She must have been bitching out people left and right?
Still does. Still does. Well, here in Chile, someone like that is very chora, like very like has like an attitude. It's very like defensive and.
Oh wow.
And so she was 22 and she came to Chile, and she wasn't part of like the vanguardia, part of the retraguardia, which was like did like other missions.
So what I mean was
the guerrilla group actually was not actually militarily it was not a success at all. I mean, they had like one attempt in the south of Chile. It was just they were discovered. It was just horrible. But because there was another group that was founded by the Communist Party, which was the Frente Patriótico Manuel Rodriguez. He was a anti-colonial man, criollo he was, that fought against Spanish rule. And so the Communist Party, many of the members were trained in Cuba. One of like the top men, he was named Raúl Pellegrini, and he was actually sent to Nicaragua to fight during the Sandinista Revolution, and then he came back to Chile to, and they were the ones who were closest. They were actually the ones who actually did, so September 1986, I want to say, that they did the atentado contra Pinochet. Also, they did like the ambush against Pinochet, and he only got like a little like boo-boo on his hand because they had a bazooka and the trigger like got stuck and was broken, and so it just didn't work. And it was actually interesting though is that
he was never tried, right? He ran away. Where did he go? Where did he ran away to?
No, he never ran away. No. Pinochet never ran away. No. O sea,
so he just stayed in Chile?
Yeah, I mean, he went to...
That's power.
Yeah. And so, but it was a woman who was in charge of operations, Cecilia Magni, also known as Comandante Tamara, which, for very machista country, the fact that as a woman in charge of a clandestine guerrilla operation.
Well, no, if you read about the Cuban Revolution, they had, they had a bunch of women comandantes, right?
Exactly. But you don't hear about them as much,
Or the Zapatistas in Chiapas, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or even in Nicaragua, for example. My cat, can't see her. Idania Fernandez, who was a commander of the Sandinista Revolution.
I love it.
She was killed. She was murdered by the Guardia Nacional right before the victory of the revolution.
Yeah. Or in Venezuela, but we can keep going. I mean, socialists don't. If you're a socialist, you can't see. You are against all kinds of exploitation, not only economic, between sexes, genders, any groups.
And I don't agree because
you're supposed to be.
That happens a lot. And the same thing
Right.
with race, for example. You know, I mean, for example, even Cuba, for example, Communist Party in
Right.
Cuba, for example, it was the 1980s. They had like one of the congresses, and they said, you know, we need more women and more black and mulatto and members to be ascended, and not just have the white Cubans be.
Or
like,
there was like a lot of huge
party.
homophobia in the early parts of the Cuban Revolution, right?
Exactly.
Sending gay men to camps, right?
Exactly.
Work camps, right?
Exactly. And but in today's Fidel's birthday, so feliz cumpleaños, comandante.
Oh wow! Happy birthday, Fidel. I mean, was he a dictator?
Like
yes. You know, do I want to live? Is Cuba my perfect country? No. But the symbol of him is very important for Latin America. It's very important.
Yeah. But he actually acknowledged, he's saying, you know, if there was there was injustice against the LGBT community during that time, and I'm the one who's responsible. You know, and that takes, I have to say, you know, takes guts.
He was in his early 30s. You know, we forget. You know, when they took over Cuba, they were like 30, right around 30. Yeah. You know, imagine that.
And so So but going back to sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I get on tangents because you say something and I'm like, oh, I need to ask you before I forget. You know.
No. So my father, he was exiled to Mexico and then returned also to Chile for the return operation, and then he met my mom because they worked together.
I was going to ask you, like, another thing I was going to ask you, when your mom went to Chile, you know, Pinochet's security apparatus is infamous, right? He had Chile under his thumb, right?
Yeah.
So when she came from America, she must have been under surveillance right away, right? Who is this woman?
Well, one thing that Pinochet, he had a saying that, you know, the no leaf moves without me knowing.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there was they had we call it like a fachada, like a whole like tie like fachada, so like a cover, because you know she studied on Fulbright. My mom.
Wow.
She studied on Fulbright to come here to Chile, and you know, she was this little gringuita that was just, no, I'm gonna learn, you know, I'm gonna teach, I'm gonna get a master's in journalism and teach classes, you know, like, you know,
that's badass.
She lived in a wealthy neighborhood, so like honestly, no one's gonna suspect, you know, this little gringuita, you know.
Yeah.
Never. And then we moved to the States. My mom, brother, and we moved to the States. I was born in 1991. So I was born like 1 year to democracy. Democracy that was pacted with Pinochet. The Concertación.
Still underneath the Pinochet constitution.
Exactly. And so we moved, and I grew up outside of Boston, and I lived there basically most of my life until like 18 years old. And then I went to study in Eckerd College, small college in St. Petersburg, Florida, right next to Tampa, on the east side of Florida. And then I came to Chile in 2012. So after almost 20 years of being absent, I was here for my first birthday. So 20 years of being absent from Chile, and then I've stayed basically ever since.
Why did you go to Chile?
Because I always wanted to go back, you know, being like my
homeland,
of birth.
Patria,
exactly, country of birth. I never really felt like American, and I felt like gringo.
No?
I always had like, I remember when I was playing with like toys, like, you know, it would always be like, you know, like the indigenous people versus like the Europeans, like,
yeah.
I had that like calling, you know, and my mom always told me stories, and I always felt like I belonged more in Latin America than with gringos, and not because of language. I learned English and Spanish like at the same time.
Yeah.
But I always just had like a more of a connection. And so when I came back to Chile, I said, you know, this is esto para mí, you know, this is for me. Like, this is where I feel at home. This is where I feel most comfortable.
Was that your first time going to Chile? Or
in
you had
2012,
visited?
yes. I hadn't visited.
So what was your impression? I mean, you hear stories like me. When I was growing up, I heard stories of Honduras, you know, from my mom and my grandma. And then you go and you know, the stories, you line them up with the, you know, what you see. So what did you see?
Exactly. Well, I was certain things I guess I didn't imagine, but also like, you know, it's funny because I stayed at a hotel that was right near one of the old places my mom used to live in. And it was completely changed. Like, oh, like, you know, my made a pasteleria. And I was like, Mom, ya no existe, ¿cachai? And then, you know, or she's like, no, you know, I live in that house. The house is like now an apartment building. It's like, oh, you know. But I mean, in terms of like culture and language, you know, I was already like prepared, I guess, because, you know, my mom's, but, you know, certain words. Now I always make fun of my mom because she has like the slang from the 80s. So like, you know, I have to like update her, you know, like for example, like a snotty rich person used to be pituco, but now like we say cuico. So, you know, I had to like say, you know, update this word or a certain word. Oh, people say this word. No, don't use that spot. Oh, what about this, you know? But, you know, I mean, I was prepared. I mean, and also, you know, I had to think that my mom had an image of Chile very different of what you know, it's very, like, for example, she'd probably like kill me if she heard me talking about like her militancia publicly, but it's because she doesn't understand that now it's
Right.
different, you know.
She's probably still, you know, they have PT again. They come from a different generation, different world. She probably has
And a certain
PTSD, right? She's probably still
a
looking over
certain
her
type
shoulder.
of, exactly, like a certain type of trauma that that generation
Right.
has, you know, and you still see it here today, and you know, this, you know, from like even colleagues I have, you know, in terms of like, you know, join the union, and the union work, no, because, you know, they can fire us. And, you know, that's still that fear of during Pinochet's time, you know, 17 years of military dictatorship, you know, honestly, it's going to leave a scar on you.
Yeah.
And I became an English teacher in 2014. I studied, it's called like a CELTA, like a certification of English language to adults as a second language. I did it. It's sponsored by the Cambridge University, like from England.
Wow.
And here we have an institution that's called like British Chilean Institute of Culture.
Why
so
British?
There. Why British?
Yeah, what's that connection there? I mean, Chile was never a British colony or had any.
I don't know actually. But we do have British connections because
Really?
The Edwards family is one of the owners of Chile. They immigrated to Chile in the beginning. I want to say 19th century, late 1800s, early 1900s, and they founded our first newspaper. Our first national newspaper was El Mercurio, which is a very, very conservative newspaper. And a man named Agustin Edwards. I don't know if he was like the grandfather or the son, because they're all like named Agustin Edwards. But he was worked with the CIA because he traveled to the United States to get money to make sure Allende tried to make sure Allende didn't become president, because Allende was like the eternal candidate. That's what he said. Allende, his cousin. No, it's not cousin. No, yeah, cousin. No, niece.
Because he'd been trying to become president since the early 60s, right?
Allende, yeah, like right? Sanders, like for years, like always, like trying to get there, and finally he got there in 1970s. And Agustin Edwards, you know, supported, you know, all the coup attempts and supported Pinochet. They covered up many of the murders and disappearance of people. Like, for example, there was this one revolutionary. I'm blanking out her name. But for example, she was murdered by the security forces, and her body was left in the Italian embassy. And they said no, it was because, you know, at the time femicide didn't exist, the term femicide, femicidio. So they said it was a passionate crime. And really, it was a political crime. Or for example, they murdered about 119 miristas from this Mir group. They were murdered by security forces, by military, and they said no, it was a riffraff between them. And then they said they exterminated like rats. Like it's on a newspaper, on the front page of the newspaper of La Mercurio, La Segunda, which is another newspaper owned by the Edwards family. And they've never been tried. You know, there's a documentary about it for the people who want it. It's on YouTube. It's called El Diario de Agustín. And it's on YouTube, and talks about how, you know, this media empire, you know, worked against, you know, Allende and this, you know. So,
but that's,
you know,
that's very. I mean, you could say it's true in the United States, but that's very naked in Latin America, right? There's always a conservative.
Exactly.
Probably usually the most popular
newspaper. Global in Brazil, for example. Right. You know, yeah, various ones in Venezuela. You know, and they talk about how they can't express themselves, but they have like front pages like, no, Chavez was a dictator.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like if Venezuela was a dictatorship like Pinochet, it would not. He couldn't do any of that stuff. There would be no protests. There'd be nothing. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just gonna be naive here and ask you questions that I just think that I'm curious about.
Ahead.
Like, so what is the millennial political culture in Chile? Right? Chile to me is a very political place because you guys have a very political history. So, what is that? What is the political culture of, especially the youth?
Well, I would say, I mean, at first it was just, I mean, for example, the generation that grew up like post dictatorship, like right after like from the 90s,
right?
They'll call it a generation of like ni ahí, because this is a little trivia, I guess. So there's an expression here in Chile that says "no estoy ni ahí." It's like I don't care, I don't give a shit, because the legend says that this comes from a language, I don't know, like not a dialect, but like a slang term that's called "coa," which is basically from the jail, like jail speak. Because when guys would like fight, not fight, like hit, prisoners. Thank you. They would say, no, but yo no estaba ahí, no estaba ni ahí, you know. And then that's where it came from. Like, oh, so this generation is called like ni ahí because they didn't care about anything. It's just, you know, sálvese quien pueda, like, you know, every man and woman for themselves, like blah blah blah. And so they really did not weren't into politics. And then we had something called the Penguin Revolution 2006, because this was when the March of the Penguins, that little movie, the little penguin movie. And so the school uniforms looked like little, and the kids, when they marched, looked like little penguins.
That's
so
good. That's good.
Pingüinos.
That's good.
And these were against Pinochet's laws of education laws, because here in Chile, we have a huge disparity of everything. We're one of the most unequal countries in the world. But everything's privatized. You know, most high schools are private. There's charter schools. They're colegios subvencionados. And so for many years, these schools were half and half. So they were partially owned by the state and they're owned by private companies or private business people. And so they would receive money from the state and they would receive vouchers from the families.
We have those too. They're called charters here. They're
charter schools, exactly. Yeah. And so they use them to, you know, close all public schools, because it's like 30% of kids like now go to public high schools in Chile. And so these schools, and there's not really any big differences between the education. It's just the segregation level. Yeah. You know, you segregate based on who is able to pay. Yeah. Right? And so,
and that's usually not Black people and indigenous people. It's usually exactly, white people, right?
And so, well, race here in Chile is very, very, very different.
We'll get into that too. I mean, you know, get into that too, because
here in Chile, we are. I was thinking about this the other day, because I think here in Latin America, like many countries, I would say until recently, because many countries have changed this, but there's a narrative that we are like, the mestizaje, which is true, because most of us, we are mixed race.
Yeah, me, I have European blood. I got indigenous blood. I got African blood.
Me too. Like, yeah. You know, like, and so like, but here in Chile, like in many countries, it's something like colorism. Like, for example, like, you know, and you also see it because of segregation, you know, because segregation is by class, but also you do see it, not all the time, but many times it's more people who have blonde hair and blue eyes and fair skin who lived in the wealthy neighborhoods.
And you see that in all Black countries. You see that in places like Haiti and Jamaica, or even Africa, where darker Black, you know, there's all these grades of Black, you know, because everybody's Black, so now there's all these classes of colorism, right?
Exactly. And so here we see this narrative of us being like, you know, la raza chilena, like, you know, of mestizaje, but not really, but that's it, you know, because you don't accept, you know, other indigenous groups, you know, here in Chile, you know, because we have people in the south of Mapuche, on the north we have Aymara, for example, just like in Bolivia, and so you're not, you know, there's no recognition of being this, you know, like certain, like, you know, like it's not, you know, it's something seen as so, like, for example, here in Chile, like, you know, the other day, like in my building, we were talking about like the protests, like, because we call them caceroleos, when you do pot and pan banging protests. He was doing it for the Mapuche, and people saying, no, but we have nothing to do with Mapuche. But we all, most, like 90% of Chileans, at least in the center, southern part of Chile, because in the north, there weren't Mapuche, that we have Mapuche blood, you know, like it is who we are, you know, obviously, like, you know, it's this whole like concept that like, you know, races, o sea, that like this narrative of being mestizo, mestiza, but it's not like embracing as much as you could, because it's not saying like, you know, you know, because for example, Bolivia and Ecuador, they are plural national countries. O sea, right. You know, you have the state, but the nationality, like for example, you have people like, okay, Bolivians are mestizo, mestiza, but you also have people who are, you know, Aymara or Incan, for example, or Quechua, you know, like who are recognized as different people. You know?
I think Bolivia has like how many different official languages, right? And if you're in the government, or you used to, before they kicked out, what's his name? Evo
Morales.
Yeah, before they kicked him out, you know, you had to speak multiple languages just to be in the Congress, right? And the laws were written in multiple languages.
Exactly. And here in Chile, you know, we're so light years from now, you know, to see, you know, political prisoners, the Mapuche political prisoners, you know, because the ancestral land, you know, because of course, you know, tourism's like, oh, look, a little cute Mapuche, but, you know, Mapuche's like, hey, I want my land back. It's like, oh, no, you're not cute anymore. You're a violent terrorist, you know, because the region of Araucanía is militarized. Say it's like a war zone, you know, they have the checkpoints and they, you know, always raiding communities. They throw tear gas bombs into like the communities. You know, people are have elderly people, you have children. You know, think all the PTSD that the children suffer. You know, and also like seeing like, you know, why do they hate us for being different, for being Mapuche? You know, so you know it's a huge problem that we have, and it's huge debt that we have, because in the day, you know, we have, and same thing also like more in my mind about, for example, we have African blood. I did this 23andMe test. That's why I'm saying like because you know I learned that, you know, I have Mapuche blood. I'm from my father's side, mostly Spanish, but I also have Mapuche. But I also have African, because which makes sense because here in Chile we didn't have slavery on a big scale. We didn't have plantation of Africans were not enslaved. Africans were not really brought here as like en masse, but they had like certain jobs, like for example as butlers, for example, or other domestic services.
Right.
And actually they said like Santiago in the 19th century, I don't know what point, but like 20% of the population of Santiago was African descent. So like honestly, most of us.
What was the percentage?
20%.
Jesus.
Wow. But most of us, honestly, you look at us, Chileans, we don't have, African traits, but we have in our DNA because, for example, I had a, great grandparent that was from Senegal. And many of the enslaved Africans that came to the Americas were from places like Angola, Senegal, Ghana, for example,
No, because the skin color goes away really fast. Like if you have a black parent and a white parent, like you might have white skin, right? And nobody would never know that you have a black parent, like black parent, right?
Like Mariah Carey, for example.
Oh yeah, or a lot of people, right?
A lot of many famous people,
But it's so in America,
there's no recognition,
The recognition of what?
Of other, for example, this I was saying about like African blood, like for example, Chile, like hasta ahí nomás, like this is there, like we're mestizo of like Mapuche with with a Spaniard, and that's it, but like never talk about the African part or even up other parts of Chile because we have a whole secularism problem and everything revolves. Half the country of Chile, half the country population lives here in Santiago. We're a country of almost 18 million people, 8.5 million live here in Santiago.
So you're like Chile's basically Santiago surrounded by other places.
Exactly, and that's the expression. Santiago no es Chile, So like you have mestizaje Mapuche, but you also have Aymara of other people, and way down south too. Like basically getting to Antarctica, you had people that were exterminated by the Spanish or the Portuguese, for example. So
that's crazy. What was I gonna say? I mean, in America, it's I'm sure like the identity politics thing is really. I get it, right? Yeah. And it comes from postmodernism, and I get that you have to really dissect your identity. But I mean, for me, they're taking it too far, right? Because so now, like this girl Kamala Harris, right? Her dad is Jamaican and her mom is Indian, and they're saying she's not black, right? She's not really black. She's from Jamaica. And it's like, the same thing they said with Obama, right? He's not really black. His dad is African. What they mean by black in America, they mean that you are descendant from slaves that were here in America. That's what they mean by black. So it's like, and so a lot of black people are mad, like, oh, we don't have a black candidate yet. We haven't had a black president yet. We don't have so it's like, and they don't care about the politics. Again, I told you, I gave you the resume of the record of this girl, this lady, this woman. Sorry.
Gun woman.
And she's not for black people, right? Her policies are not for black people, but she has dark skin, or I mean, there's even an argument that I've heard floated that they, Joe Biden said, I'm going to pick a woman. Not only did he say that before anything, he said, I'm going to pick a woman. She's going to be a woman. And then they made him say, I'm going to pick a black woman. Like whoever my vice president is going to be, she's going to be a black woman, which is weird to say. I get it. Again, inclusion, I get it. But that's weird to say.
But it's also very cosmetic. O sea, because, for example, here in Chile, for example, 2014 elections, it was 2013 for the 2014 presidency, we had 2 women president candidates. But it didn't mean like there was any advance for feminism or for abortion laws, because there was Michelle Bachelet versus Evelyn Matei, for example. It was 2 women, also blonde women, like if you want, like talk about like cosmetic thing, like.
But not even that, not even just the cosmetic. I mean, there are women, this is what I mean by identity groups. There are people in your identity group who are not for the identity group. Exactly. There are women who are not for women.
Evelyn
there are black
politicians
who are not for black people.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing of the identity politics, because
and the cosmetic, right? We're falling for this woman because she's black, right? But the argument is that they only pick light-skinned. Then it gets to that, right?
But
they only pick light-skinned black people. They don't pick dark-skinned black people.
But you also say, for example, Kanye West is black, but like he's completely right-wing. Is is very conservative for like for the wealthy. Which
he just met with Jared Kushner supposedly,
black working class people. So it's like
right. But I mean, it's gotten so Martin Luther King has that famous line, right? I have a dream that one day people are going to be judged by the color, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, right? And it's crazy that liberals now judge people by the color of their skin, right? We need a black woman vice president. We need a Latino this. We need a Indian that. Like, What about their record? What do they stand for?
But it's
What about their
also like
politics?
a quota, it's like a quota. It's just like to say like to like be like politically correct. They'll say like, oh, like we have this candidate, but we'll say this person, but it's but it doesn't mean like the actual like. But it's also something that's like also like forced because in the United States segregation is very racial, like it's still very strong, like in the neighborhoods. Like I remember I grew up in the suburbs outside of Boston, and like there was like one black family, like and
there's a joke about Boston that it's like San Francisco, but with the N word. Like it's just like there's a lot of racism in Boston, right? Because there's a lot of working class Italian, working class black, working class and they're all segregated, right?
In their own neighborhood, yeah, exactly. There's a huge segregation problem. I remember like when I studied at Hector College in St. Petersburg, for example, you left the college and you turned right, you'd go to the working class black neighborhood, and you turned left, you went to the middle class white neighborhood.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, I lived in a suburb of Chicago. Chicago's, they say, is one of the most segregated cities in the United States. Like if you look at a map, you see where the Latinos live, you see where the black people live, and you see where the rich white people live, and they all live in different parts of the city. I lived in a suburb of Chicago, and we lived in the ghetto apartment buildings, right? And it was all Latinos, black people, and Eastern Europeans, immigrants, Polish, Russian. And then all the white people, they lived in houses, like literally across the street in houses that had pools and stuff. And so I remember being a kid thinking like, this is weird. Like, how did this get like this? Why are these people over here who look like me? Why are we over here? And why are the white people? And that's what kind of got me into politics at a very young age, or into history at least. Like, how did this become like this? And people don't ask those questions, right? I mean, so how did you get involved with Prensa? I mean, this is a good segue. How did you get involved with Prensa Irreverent Press? I'll say that.
Prensa Irreverente. Well, the project was created it was originally El Irreverente in 2012 because there was no really any media that came from the social movements in Chile at the time. So it was basically seen as like a noticiero, like a news station almost of social movements. Kind
of like a Democracy Now kind of thing. I love Democracy Now. They always
but different, but also more like militant, I would say. More like also like a militancia política. So like in the sense that here in Chile we have an expression as mojarse el poto, which is like get your butt wet, like to be like
I like that.
Papa quema, like to be where the potatoes are burnt, like to be like out in action, like not like take more risks, I would say. And so like if for example, people did direct actions like take over or sit in or take over of public ministry or of schools or of other things. And well, unfortunately, Prensa Irreverente does not exist anymore.
What happened?
In Chile, there's a lot of within the Chilean left, there's a historical problem of divisions and sectarianism. So because of these long story division, that ended up not existing anymore. There's a new one I've collaborated with. It's called, for you guys to follow, it's called El Punto Prensa, which is a different approach, similar but different approach. Is more digital than, because we had written physical newspaper that was written, but also digital media. But this is more this is only digital media that covers news in Chile and Latin America and the world.
I think print's dead, especially with our generation and younger. Print is dead. I mean, because I read newspapers every day, but I don't get a newspaper sent to my house, ever.
No, my mom does, but she's old school.
Right.
But basically because but I got into politics. I mean, really, because my mom, us, and she didn't brainwash me, but she came up with the idea, taught me about many things.
Awareness, gave you awareness.
Awareness. There's pictures of Che, for example. We have the front page of the newspaper Mercurio that came out 2 days after the coup, Pinochet's coup in 1973. It was the only newspaper that was allowed to circle during the time. And so always it was just something that's very, very present. And then coming here in Chile, is more natural. And then obviously the student movement, and I first came back to Chile in 2012, and the student movement was 1 year old. So it was very natural for me to get involved.
Right.
It happened it was a very natural thing that happened,
It's crazy. I mean, it's so, we've been talking for how long now? About 45 minutes. I mean, you want to get into this? I want to talk to you about this Latinx thing, right?
Yeah.
What do you think as a Chilean, as a Latin American? What do you think about the what do you think about the word Latino? We'll start
So
there.
when I was younger, I always identify as like Latino because I was like being in the States, you know, being a Latino is like because I feel like like being Latino or Latina identity is like something that's only in the United States, really. I would say maybe in Puerto Rico also, but you know, there's a notion of being Latino is very different versus being Latin American because you can still be because a ver como.
No, I get what you're saying. I consider myself Latino. I consider Latino also a political identity too.
Yeah.
And but you know, as a Latino, I am of Latin American descent.
Exactly, because you know the Latinos who don't speak Spanish, for example, so it's like unique. But Latin America is me like, you know. It's
what do you think of Latin America? Does Brazil fit in there? Does Haiti fit in there?
Yeah, I know. No, yeah, they can. I mean, I can. When I say Latin America, I consider like Latin America, like continents of America, o sea, continent of America.
Las Americas.
Las Americas, exactly, and also the Caribbean. O sea.
But that's not a popular definition. That's not a popular definition.
But I would say, but I wouldn't maybe include necessarily like I don't include like the Latin speaking.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Caribbean.
Well,
like,
it's hard to
Dominican Republic.
But
Puerto
it's hard to exclude Jamaica. I know it's English speaking. I get that.
It's English speaking, but it's still part of our America.
They're Taínos. They're Taínos. You know, they're indigenous there, you know, and black, right? So what, just because they speak English? I speak English, you know, that's my primary language. Am I not Latino, right? I don't know. But and then we're saying, okay, people from Spain are different from people from England. I mean, they're European, right? Like
no, yeah, they're European on the sound. Although you could argue that, for example, in Spain, though, people are 100% European because, you know, you have the whole people also have Arab descent, you know, because of the Moors, we say in Spanish. Yeah. The Moors mixed with Spanish
Catholicism, right?
Well, Catholicism.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And people don't realize that they know that in Spain, but the Latinos here, they don't realize how much of Spanish culture, Spain, which is got inherited to Latin America, right? We kind of adopt a lot lot of it.
And also in the Arab.
It's Arab. It's very Arab, right?
But
Algebra and all those, any word, something like every word that ends with an MA is, any word that ends with an MA is
Almohada, for example. Almohada comes from Arabic, sorry. Ojalá comes from Arabic, for example. And I think about many words. I mean, the influence is very heavy, you know.
Okay, so we're back to the word Latino. We're back to the word Latino.
Sorry. But
I got you off track.
But I think it's more like an English-speaking term because here in Chile, like, we don't say we're Latinos. We say we're Latinoamericanos. We're Latin Americans. Because here you don't. Because in the States, there's also like an ethnicity that was basically based created like we're Hispanic, for example, like created like for like the U.S. Census, you know. Because also that's another thing. Because for example, the United States. Because race is so different because the racism there is very strong, but it's also very different because, for example, there's no mestizaje. So when they talk about their melting pot in the United States, they talk about basically a mix of European cultures. You have people, no, I'm Italian and Irish. Okay, but you're still European descent. You don't have mix of races like here in Latin America. Honestly, we can't romanticize it because Latin America most of the time was based on rape and pillage. But in the United States, you know, you have people who are, most of the population is not purely white, but mostly white. You know, look at it. You know, like it's very different versus the racism we have and colorism we have here in Latin America versus like the racism in the United States because people are so focused like on a drop of blood because it's like because I remember like learning in school like there was a man that during segregation time he sat like on a trolley and they're like no, but you have like 1/8 of African blood, therefore you're not white. And it's just like here in Chile, like I'm white because colorism, I'm white, but in the United States, no, I'm not because I have indigenous blood, I'm mixed race,
And 1/8 is what? 1/8 means one great grandparent is black. That's insane. So they can all be white, and you have one great grandparent who's black, and you're black.
Exactly. So because in the United States, so like it's obsessive of like that, you know, that's why I think for gringos and, you know, it was like how to see like people who are mixed race, o sea, mestizo, mestiza, you know, coming from different countries and from all over Latin America to the United States and a mixed race, you know, like you can't categorize us like, because here in a sentence, like in Chile, like, you know, like I haven't done the sentence yet. Actually, no, because it's I don't know how many years it is, but like, you know, like for example, you have like indigenous, you know, descent, or like, you know, you see as we call it here in Spanish, we call pueblo originario, like original people, originaria. I don't know what the correct English term is, but like, you know, no one's gonna say like, you know, you identify as, you know, Latino, like as a ethnicity, like because it's like one, and I think it's a category that's created in the United States, you know. And also, you know, you like reivindicar, like you like, I don't know what the word reivindicar in English is, like you profess, I guess. Reivindicar is like profess like the, like being the Latin culture, you know, in the United States, being of Latin descent, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the whole melting pot thing, right? America professes to be a melting pot, but you know, this is another thing that you hear. It's more of a salad, right? You know, in the salad, there's everything, but it's not mixing, right? The tomato's the tomato, the lettuce is the lettuce, right?
It's a salad bowl.
Right, it's a salad bowl, right? And so that's what we have here, and we're very, as Americans, we're very aware of it, right? Because we're constantly told, right, what the percentages are, right? Percentage Black, percentage Latino, percentage Asian, percentage white, percentage Indigenous.
But also, there's so many stereotypes of being Latin in the States. O sea, for example, like, you know, they probably say I'm not Latino because I'm white, because I'm light skinned, but just like, but they don't understand it's not race, you know, it's not, there's no way, you know, because there's also a notion, you know, and so racism in the United States is so very deep and so very like, you know, people say like being American, but you know, they refer to as white people. People are descendants of Europeans because, you know, treat Black Americans, African Americans as like second class, not even citizens. They treat them like, you know,
then you try to tell a white American that, you know, people in Argentina consider themselves American too. Everybody in Latin America consider themselves Americanos, right?
Yeah.
And that in the United States, you're Norteamericano or Estadounidense, you know? White Americans don't know anything about that at all.
No. Then they get offended. Like, no, but technically, you know, it's just like, no, but actually, though, you know.
So what about the word Latino, Latina? Like, is Latino misogynist? Is it binary? Do we need Latinx? Do we need another word?
O sea, I mean, I think...
Honestly, I'm asking you honestly. I'm not telling you. I'm not trying to... You know what I mean?
No, o sea, I know that Latinx comes because here in Chile and many places in Latin America, we have started using, like, we call it lenguaje inclusivo, like inclusive language. But it has different forms because, for example, like, you know, if I want to say it, like, if I'm writing, I will say, either I'll say niños y niñas, or I'll say niños with arroba, the at symbol.
Sign, yeah.
Or you can use an X, for example. I think the X looks ugly, so I use the arroba, like the hat symbol. But also there's another thing that's called niñez, for example. Because, for example, like instead of saying like todos or todas, you say todes because it's neutral.
Yeah.
It's more inclusive.
I've heard there's this new word, Latin with an accent E at the end instead of an O.
Yeah.
Latin
That's like Beyonce.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think, you know, I don't think it's necessary
they do use X in Chile.
Yeah, but it's not pronounced though.
Yeah, how would you pronounce it in Spanish? This is great because you're Spanish and you teach English, so you know what the controversy is, right? Like because Latinx makes sense.
For example, like when we talk about presos políticos, for example, because it's men and women, and boys and girls, or people who identify as neither one, as non-binary.
Non-gender.
Non-binary. Non-gender.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's written with an X, so it's presos with an X, políticos, X, or with arroba, with the at symbol.
Yeah.
But for example, I guess in talking, you know, most, you know, because we also don't want, you know, they say like the Romans, like when they use Latin, they would very lazy, they don't want to use as many words. So for example, like, that's why, for example, when I like talk to people, like, and you use lenguaje inclusivo, you know, you say like todos y todas, so todas y todos. Mm-hmm. Because I personally don't use todes, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll say, like, when in class and I give instructions in Spanish, I'll say no, para que todos, todas y todes, because, you know, because some people might advise this one or this one, you know.
I like that idea. I mean, that makes more sense to me than Latinx, right? To say todes, you know, to change the vowel, you know, to make it inclusive, right? That makes sense to me.
but phonetically Latinx does sound like attractive. It sounds like nice. It's like, oh, like, you know, why is that? But also because it's also an English speaking term because it's Latinx. It's not, you know, because Latinx, no, like it's, you know, but you know, there's also other ways to, like, for example, like when you talk, for example, like, you know, I want to say los jóvenes instead of los y las jóvenes, you can say la juventud, for example, or for example, like when I write things and I want to talk about los docentes de inglés, no, docentes de inglés. I don't use the article that defines the gender.
Right.
So the word cachai in Chilean Spanish is, I was like, entiendes? Like, you know, like you get
cachai?
it? Cachai. Because, I'm going to do another segment about it. Because you know, like in many countries, they use vos.
Right. In
Chile,
Honduras, vos. Oye, vos.
Vos sos. But here in Chile, we have our own, it's a voceo chileno, because I think it's because of us being isolated, but we use vos, but it's never with an S. It's always written with an H. It's vo. And for example, like we use a lot from vosotros. For example, like instead of like, you can say tú eres, but we also have two ways of saying that with I will say. You can say vo soy with a Y, like sois, but with an I. With an I, or voiri. Voiri. Wow. Instead of eres, eri. For example, tú puedes comer, tú podí comer. Vos podés comer, or tú puedes comer, tú podí, or vos podí comer.
All the Latinos listening to you right now who have a weak grasp on Spanish as it is are like, holy shit.
Yeah.
No, but it's beautiful.
But only in Chile, and I don't know where it comes from. I mean, I've always been very interested in it because always it's like, why do we talk? But it's very natural. That's why, for example, and the AR verbs, for example, it's never, people can say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿cómo estáis? The I. Yeah. So, for example, cachai is never, you can say cachas, but usually it's cachai because it's AI. For example, you know, hablai.
Yeah, all that makes sense to me, right? Because this is, again, I've never heard anybody say verbally the word Latinx, like when speaking in conversation, right? Unless they're talking about the word Latinx, right? But if they're speaking Spanish,
and dear white people, they use the term. That's the first time I think I heard it.
Yeah, but in English, you hear it in English, but I'm saying like Spanish-speaking Latin Americans.
No, because we are. I mean, from what I've heard, I mean, maybe in other countries it's maybe different, but we never consider ourselves like Latinos versus Latin Americans. You know, like even Calle 13, for example, Latin America, like that song, the anthem of Latin America,
right,
talks about being Latino-Americano. You know, but I've always felt like, you know,
that's inclusive,
Latin American
right?
identity.
Yeah, I mean that's. And in a way, maybe that's what maybe we need to get rid of Latino in America. Like maybe we just need to get rid of that idea and just be Latin Americans who are, because we're, you know, I always say like the reason I'm here in America is because the American government fucked with Honduras and Puerto Rico and made my ancestors have to leave and go to America because there's no jobs in Honduras, right? But if America would have kept its hands to itself, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't be here because my dad's Puerto Rican and my mom's Honduran. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, right? I mean, I would be back wherever, you know. And so, just because I'm in America doesn't mean Latinos are the only people who do that, right? Once they go to America, they're not where they're from anymore. There's something else now, and I get that, but you're still where you're from. I think it also
maybe has to do with maybe assimilation in a sense that like you have to do it 10 times harder because you don't have the white, many cases you don't have the white skin to kind of like to have that privilege, you know, because you're always seen as the other because, you know, the United States is like mostly white. So it's like you have white people being like, oh, yeah, you know, because for example, the people never complain like, you know, like about people coming to the United States, that, you know, the white, los gringos complain like, you know, the racists like say, like, oh, people come from Central America, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, they come on someone who came from like France or like, Norway, you know, they want to complain because, you know, they're white.
Right. They wouldn't even know to complain, right? Because they're not.
No, they wouldn't. Or they'd be like, "Oh, you're from Norway. Oh, that's so interesting." You know.
Yeah, it's.
But it's like, "Oh, you're from Honduras. You're from Honduras." Oh.
Oh, so are you a migrant? Are you a fucking narco? Are you a fucking? They think I'm, you know, I'm MS-13 or something, you know.
I'm from Honduras.
People don't even know where Honduras is. They're like, "Oh, you're Hindu."
When I was younger, I had to show people where I was born on a map in the States. I'm like, "No, I'm from Chile." And they're like, "What?" I was like, "Chile is Argentina, a little stringing country in South America." Yeah.
Most Americans, they only know Mexico. I mean, they showed that most Americans don't know where Puerto Rico is, right? which is crazy, you know, because
They
you
know
own
it's,
Puerto
they don't know
Rico.
it, and then we know it's a colony. You
Yeah.
know, they say,
And
"Oh yeah,
'cause-
yeah."
but they don't want to know, right? I mean, ignorance. There's ignorance that's imposed, right? But after, you know, there's also ignorance that's self-imposed because you don't want to be.
Mm,
Because once you know, then you have to do something about it. You right?
yeah, that's true.
One last
That is true.
question. I mean, I've taken up a lot of your time. I know you're a busy man.
No, no, it's
Uh,
fine. I'm between semesters, so
oh, that's
right
right.
now not working.
Well, no, because I follow your Instagram, man. I want to go to Chile. When I go down to Chile, I'm gonna party with you because
Yeah,
you look like
yeah.
you're having a
No,
great time.
you can stay. You can stay here one day because we have an extra bed. So
I've been wanting to go to Chile for Santiago, especially. I heard that they have
yeah,
like
no, so
ceviche de tiburón and all that stuff, and I want to. I don't know. What do you
Peruvian
what's to eat?
speech.
What's to eat? What's like the good thing to eat in Chile?
Well, we have like I guess well also like because of like the last couple of years we have a lot of immigration from most of Latin America, especially Venezuela, Colombia, Peru. So we have all like their gastronomy, which is delicious, that comes here to like. So now like we just want to eat their food. But
That's
like
true,
for example,
I mean-
typical like Chilean food is like for example like we have a lot of bread. We have like pan masalo, we have yuya. It's like very like because we don't eat dinner. We have something that's called once. It's like tea time. They have like bread with like a butter.
At 11 at night, or
no, like it can be like at 6 to 9.
why do they call it once?
I don't know.
I love
Tomar
Chile, man.
once.
I love Chile.
So you eat like bread or like pastries with tea or coffee. But like there's like we have empanadas, for example, and that are like put in the oven, like baked. Sorry.
Yeah.
We have something that's called cazuela, which is like a stew. That's like you have like chicken, potato, chicken broth, and
Oh, that's everywhere. That's everywhere in Latin America, right? There's always a dish like that in every Latin American country with chicken and potato.
Sopaipilla is like a fried dough, was also used from pumpkin.
We got that. Yeah.
That they sell on the streets.
Oh, with pumpkin?
Delicious. Yeah, it can be from zapallo, for example. And there's the Mapuche version, which is very delicious. It's almost like a donut, kind of. And I'm trying to think what other very typical. I mean, also things like a lot of chicken, for example, like pollo asado, for example, and a lot of asados, like barbecues. We do like when you can, like like for holidays, for example.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of vegetarian, vegan food now because a lot of younger people aren't consuming meat, so they make a lot of like things out of soy, for example, or.
Yeah. Well, soy's a big crop in like places like Argentina, right? And they're trying to build soy a lot.
Soja, exactly.
I mean, we haven't talked, and we'll end with this. I mean, how's Chile handling the pandemic?
So we haven't flattened the curve. The virus has arrived like in.
You're talking to
March.
an American. We're not even trying to flatten the curve over here.
No, and it's sad. The comparison, talking to my mom in the United States, you guys are. I mean, it's
we're being banned from other countries.
possible.
We can't travel to other countries.
No, you shouldn't because there's no discipline.
No
Like
discipline.
here in Chile, like as much as like we hate the military, we hate like Piñera, but like if they're not doing a good job, but doing like at least like for example, like when we're in quarantine, they put like half the country in quarantine, but like for example, like you're only allowed to go out twice a week with special passes. If you have pass to work, I mean, that thing I would say like the only like positive thing that they've been doing, but like we're having like 1,500 cases a day. So we've had almost about 400,000 cases, I want to say, between 300,000, 400,000 cases in total. We have about a little bit more than 30,000 active. We've had a bit more than 10,000 deaths.
10,000 deaths. How many? What's the population of Chile?
We're 18 million.
Oh, that is a lot.
So it's a lot, and BBC News was like, Chile's doing great. It's like, what are you smoking? Like, no. And Chilean system, like already, health system's already really bad. Public health system has been in crisis for decades. There's no funding for
the
it.
inequality you're talking about. Like, so a lot of Chileans are doing great, but most aren't.
But also, for example, like we have it's called the FONASA. It's like the public health care, but you have to pay for it. I'll say like it's not coming out of taxes because it's called like I want to say ley de puestos sociales, something like that, like a social tax law that, for example, from your salary, they cut 10%. No, it's more than 10%. I don't know how much.
Kind of like a Social Security in the United States.
It's kind of like Social Security, for example. So you have so we have the pensions, cesantía, which is unemployment, and healthcare. So we have two health insurances. You have FONASA is a public one, which is more cheaper. But the problem is public health is horrible. You can't get, for for example, mental health. We have a huge mental health crisis in this country because of anxiety and depression, for example. And so you can't, like, public sector, you can never really get a therapist. People literally was a couple years ago, they did like a public list, like 24,000 people died waiting on a waiting list, to get certain surgery procedures. Plus, all the specialists are concentrated here in Santiago. And the private sector, the clinics, have something called ISAPRES, which is a private, which is very expensive. But like even the pandemic, has filled up all those, hospitals and clinics. And like some people, like for example, there's a story of a couple, like they got sick with coronavirus and they had to go. They weren't beds in the public hospital, so they had to go to the clinic, and they had like 5 million pesos, which is about like, I want to say $10,000 almost, or a little bit less. For average salary, that is like 500 pesos, 500 lucas. Like, I don't know, $700 a month, more or less, or
$700 a month average.
Yeah, more or less. No, that's conservative. No, that's even way less. No, it's $600 a month.
Wow.
Because it's about like between 300,000, 400,000 Chilean pesos, which is like almost like, I want to say, like $600, $700 more or less monthly. Plus everything you have to pay for everything else. Everything here in Chile is privatized. We have no national sovereignty. Our water supply belongs to a Spanish company. Our electricity belongs to an Italian company. Our telecommunications, Entel, for example, belongs to a Spanish company.
I mean, Chile. From what I understand,
are privatized.
Chile is the neoliberal country.
Yeah, we were the experiment. We're the lab. We're the lab rats.
The Chicago boys. Yeah, the Chicago boys. Pinochet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what in United States, in the United States, the progressives, we want universal health care, we want free college, we want to reform the criminal justice system, we want to legalize marijuana. These are some things, right? What are the things that the progressive youth want in Chile? What are they fighting for?
So I would say here in Chile we have progressive youth, we also have revolutionary youth, because we want to topple this system. We want a non-capitalist society. Some of us more blind.
I was just talking about. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was just talking to somebody about that, right? About there's reform socialism, but if you look back in the history, all the smartest, most articulate, they spoke a lot of languages, the polymaths, all the smartest socialists, they're always revolutionary socialists, because they realize that reform doesn't work. You're not gonna convince the system to change and be better. You have to smash it and then create another system.
Exactly.
So is that where the revolutionary youth in Chile is at?
I would say, because the thing is here in Chile, like, there's not like a big militancia política. There's no actual like political memberships, but like, for example, and if in the protests, like we have a thing called like Primera Línea, which is basically like the front line. They're the ones with the holdouts, the militarized police, while everyone else would like protest like peacefully in the main plaza. They used to call Plaza Italia, it's called Plaza de la Dignidad, like Dignity Square. But like, people would say like the entire system has to go. I'll say, it's not just universal healthcare, it's not just universal education. We have, there's so many problems we have. We want to renationalize our natural resources, for example, industrialize the country, create a new constitution, but, a constitution set up, because like at one point we had like two platforms. It was like the political demands was, for example, freedom for political prisoners. Currently we have 2,000 political prisoners in Chile, people who are mostly youth who are arrested during the protests, who have no concrete evidence in su contra against them. And just, considered dangerous to society, but, you have other kinds of, people who are wealthy, for example, we had a case of a man who, a serial rapist, basically, and they wanted to give him house arrest. And people, the women and girls went out and protested, and they said, okay, like we'll put him in a real jail cell. But I consider like, dangerous society, so and for the new constitution, Asamblea Constituyente, Constituent Assembly. But even that they'd barely give us. Like, no, we're gonna like vote in the plebiscite, because see if we have like the congressmen do it with like independently elected citizens, or citizens elected, to write the new constitution. And then to more economic demands, for example, our pension system is, so we have a privatized pension system. Let's say, for example, it's called ATP, and this was created during the dictatorship. It was actually Piñera's father, José Piñera, who created the system. And, he said, for example, you take all the pensioners' money and you put it into the accounts, and the accounts before the dictatorship, they'd go to like social services, like like the workers of today, finance. So the workers of yesterday, like pay the workers of today pay the workers the pensions of the workers of yesterday, basically. And
that's how we are here.
Build like social housing, but here no. O sea, all that money is invested into big banks and businesses. Literally,
wow.
We literally
and they play with it, right? They go to play with it and make profits off of it.
And so in the supermarket, and then they return to you like what because there's always a risk, and so majority of elderly pensioners aren't really pensioned because they have 90% of them receive less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
Minimum, so they have to go and work. So you see the old people selling things or begging for money. It's terrible, and there's no social security. There's nothing. It's all the market. And so one of the big demands is for the end of the system to have like a more solidarity system. But recently we had protests because there was a group of congressmen, I want to say, that said we can have the pensioners, people withdraw like 10% of their AFP, of the pension. And the people, the right wing was like, no, the country's going to go disaster now. And so we went on protests. We did pot and pan.
The cacerolazo,
for example. People went out, did barricades, roadblocks, and when we got it, but it still has this fine print. And for example, I received, because if you had less than a million pesos, which is million pesos, I want to say is maybe $2,000, but I didn't receive all of it, so I had to go and fight again. So that's one of the big problems, the pension system. The problems with Mapuche, for example, give back ancestral land, the land reform, really, minimum wage, for example, the wages of salaries, gender violence, homophobia, for example, and, obviously education, healthcare is just, complete, the entire system has to be redone. I'll say,
yeah.
There's no way around it.
It's a web, right? It's a spider web. You pull out one little string, the web's still there.
Exactly. So we need to create a new system, and the problem is at this time there's no political force that's able to bring about lead those changes, really, because I was talking about the Frente Amplio, they're reformists. So they're progressive, but they're reformists. So they work within the system. And you go out the system, no, that's not the way.
Like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a social democrat. I'll say, when they talk about Bernie Sanders, socialism is like the Scandinavian countries, like a social welfare state. It's not actual socialism. He doesn't want to socialize the means of production.
He wants to make
universal
tame
social
capitalism.
Rights.
Tame capitalism, which you can't tame. You can't tame it.
No. But honestly, he's the best. For now, he's the best.
That they offer us. He's not the best candidate. He's the only candidate that they offer us, right? Because we can't have. There are real socialists in America, right? Obviously, America has a very strong union socialist. We celebrate May 1st. We celebrate May Day because of what the killing of the anarchists in Chicago in 1888 or something like that. Haymarket, right?
Yeah.
America. To all my American fellow citizens, we've been talking for a while now. I would, learn about the socialist history of the United States and learn about Chile, because Chile is what the American government wants for America. That's why they experimented
and
with Chile.
there. You guys are getting close to that. I mean, you already have charter schools that close, so many public schools.
That's what I'm saying. I'm hearing you talk about all the problems in Chile, and I'm like, you know what? We have the seeds of that already here, and we're sliding towards that. Man, it's been so great to talk to you, man. You got to come back on, man. Yeah. You got to come back on, because I didn't know, we talked about a lot, and there's so much we could talk about, but I try to keep these
Take advantage. I'm unemployed until October. That's another problem. We have public sector that most of us, they don't give us a contract. We do it's called honorarios, and you have you don't actually have a contract. So they don't pay for your healthcare, your pension. It's very horrible.
I was reading about how in the professional football players in the United States, they're off in the summer, and they don't get paid in the summer supposedly.
No.
And so when their last game ends maybe if they go to Super Bowl in January, they don't have any money the whole summer. And these are young, mostly black men who have no experience with handling money, and so they're broke by March. And they're eating McDonald's all the way till the season starts. I believe that's right. There's a There's some documentary out there that talks about
Wow.
it. But thank you, man, for coming. Letting everybody know where they can find you and what you're up to on social media and all that.
Oh yeah, and Benjamín Buendía. So they can add me on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah. What made you change the name?
Share things.
What made you change the last name? Are,
Yeah,
you are you hiding from the government? Should I know?
No, no. This is a very great story, very telenovela. So I learned that my biological father was last year because I always thought it was my mom's ex-husband, my ex-stepfather. But the end doesn't matter because he never was present anyway. So I was raised by my single mother. But so I learned that. So, and we don't know like the real identity of my biological father because he was clandestine in Chile. He was being hunted down. So like my mom never knew his she only knew we call it Chapa here in Chile as a political name. So I decided, to take my own destiny and change my name to Buendía for the Buendía family, really for Aureliano Buendía from 100 Years of Solitude from Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh wow.
Colombian writer, because I said, I'm not aloof. It's a fake last name because I always talk about the history of my ex-stepfather, the Alamo family. His parents were Turkish immigrants that came to Valparaiso, Sephardic Jews. So when I did my 23andMe test and I learned about my ancestry, I learned that my brother and I are actually half brothers, and
that's crazy. I mean, yeah, so. There's this whole thing your parents name you when you're a baby, right? But they don't know who you are. They don't know who you are. They're so maybe they name you something wrong that's not really you, right? And so you see artists do that, right? They pick their own name, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not, my parents didn't know me when they named me, so I get to pick my own name when I find out who I am, right? That's beautiful. That's nice that you did that. I mean, I went from Hector Luis Alamo Jr. because I wanted to, my dad's Hector Luis Alamo, and he was not present, and I had a bad relationship with him, so I wanted everybody, the whole world to know that I'm not him, Junior. And now I'm Hector Luis Alamo because now I'm no, I own that name now,
Yeah.
I've done a lot for it under that name, and it's not my name now. And now I'm thinking, should I get rid of the Luis? Should I have another name? Because people used to do that all the time, writers especially, right? They used to have a pen name, and you find out that what their real name is. You're like, oh, that's why they have a pen name. Because if they ever wrote under their real name, nobody would want to read their books, but they always pick a pen name that's beautiful.
I happened with one of my favorite writers, Eduardo Galeano.
Oh, right. What was his birth name?
His birth name is Hughes. He's Eduardo Maria Jose Hughes Galeano because one of his great grandparents was from Wales, and so Hughes, he used to write when he was younger. He used to Eduardo Hughes, but it was with a not like Hughes. It was GUI something. And he said, I'm just use my mother's maiden name, Galeano.
Yeah, I mean, there's a essay there's this essay that Obama wrote when he was in 3rd grade in Indonesia. And he's like, my name is Barry Sotelo, which was his stepfather's name. So when he was in elementary school, he identified as Barry Sotelo, and it only became Barack Obama later. But I think Neruda, that's not his birth name either. That's his pen name too.
I don't think so. I think he has a pen. Yeah, Pablo Neruda has a different name.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much, man. I'll bring you back on for sure. Maybe, there's so much to talk about, right?
About September 11th, the anniversary of the coup and the dictatorship.
Yeah, that's a good time to bring you back on, and we'll talk about that, and we'll find out. We'll compare notes, what's going on in Chile and what's going on in the United States, man.
Yeah, see what happens a month from now.
Stay happy, stay healthy. Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
We talk on social media, and I'll let you know when this comes out, man. Peace, man.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye.